you want to just let us know a bit about yourself, what you're about?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I am Ria. I'm a singer, songwriter, and producer based in Manchester and London at the moment. My music is majorly pop, dancey pop, but I always try and bring in my influences. So, tablas, and in terms of percussion or synth sitar vibes, you'll always hear something a little bit different in my instrumentation. And same with fashion. I'm really big on wearing bold jewelry, all reminiscent of the kind of Bollywood influences I've had growing up. But yeah, it's predominantly pop.
Nice. I wasn't aware that you were partially based in Manchester. Whereabouts?
So I'm just off of about 20 minutes from Manchester city centre. So it's
Nice.
super, super fun. But I do love, it's always difficult between Manchester and London. It's so difficult when people ask me like, oh, which one do you prefer? Like, same.
Well, I know what I would say, but
Why?
well, Manchester-based show, not definitely not going to say one of them. So mm,
Okay, okay.
think about
Okay.
what show you're on before answering that question.
True, it's true.
Mm,
But for real, I love both.
yeah.
Uh, I make music in both. So
Yeah, no, and I think that's a lucky position to be in where you're not necessarily limited to one place and you're kind of getting a different vibe. That's because I imagine recording in different places, you feel different depending on the different locations, right?
sure, for sure. I have a very comfort thing though. Like I always record from my home studio, and that's why Manchester. I love London because there's such a creative scene there. Like it's always so inspiring. Like I went to uni there as well, so I've lived there for 3 4 years. Well, a couple of years because pandemic hit, but I always record my stuff from home.
So you talked before about like how you try to put in these sort of influences from your Asian background. Do you find that comes to you naturally, or do you find sometimes it's like a thought process? How can I actually do this, or is it a bit of both?
It should come naturally. Like for me, I always hear it in something that I'm producing and then I'll put it in. Like there are a couple of tracks that don't necessarily have that. But the ones that I vibe with the most and the ones I end up releasing are the ones that have that kind of intrinsic percussive element, or something just a little bit unique and different. Even in permission, like I it's not massively obvious, but there are really strong flute melodies that go throughout the verses. And you I just, whatever I hear, it goes into the track. It's not necessarily like I need to put a tabla in this now.
Yeah, because otherwise it becomes like a bit like forced. Like, and
Yeah,
sometimes there are songs that don't need that, and they can still be good. It's just you might prefer other ones more or less. Like,
100%.
sure. Just want to say as well, like obviously we're talking about like the Asian influences. I've just noticed your earrings; they are very nice. I just feel like I need to put that out there, like before we move forward. But
Yeah, that's like a daily practice. Like I can't leave the house if I don't have something cute like this on. Like it just
yeah,
makes me more confident. I can't really explain it.
no, yeah, I can definitely imagine that. Thinking about your past discography as well, because I think we've known of you, and just before this interview, I was like thinking like refreshing myself in terms of your discography, and I realized, oh wow, like you have actually had like a bit of a break like over 2022 in terms of putting stuff out. So like, what have you been up to over the past year?
I've literally been writing. And when I say nonstop, it's nonstop. So this year we have planned out our releases. So they're going to be every 2 months ish. So, and what I've tried to do is they're going to be singles that come out through, which is what I was working on, kind of mastering my sound. Like, what do I want to say was the really big question that I wanted to just stop and ask, because as much as I love my earlier releases, now what I've done is for the next few singles, they're all based on aphorisms or sayings or kind of well-known quotes that have inspired me when I've heard them. And I've tried to make them into catchy hooks or, dancey type pop sounds. So that's super exciting. And I'm trying to make sure that overall, like at the end of the year, you can kind of see a story form between the singles that are released. So it's much more methodical in terms of releases, and that took time just to understand, okay, what what's coming, like what's next.
For sure. And would you say speaking on your most recent single, Permission, would you say that that was like the start of this new era almost?
For sure. I mean, even the visuals and the sound, like everything on Permission, in terms of the production came very, very naturally. And it was the first track that I'd kind of produced and written instantaneously. Like it all happened very quickly. And that now, yeah, is kicking off this kind of new bum 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 single back to back. So you won't
Sure.
be forgetting my name, let's put it that way. I'll be
Nice.
popping up every now and again.
No, I look forward to that. So delving more into Permission, if you like look at the lyrics, it is like you say, telling a story, quite like deep, intrinsic sort of vibes. So do you want to just tell us a bit about how that song came about and also why you decided this is the single that I want to put out that's going to kind of kickstart, like we just said, this whole kind of like putting out music on a like bi-monthly basis sort of thing?
So I think for Permission, it actually came about, it was completely story driven because I was watching a show. Because I tend to write from, I know a lot of people write from personal experiences, but I can write from any perspective. Like that's why I love watching shows, and I love, I can find inspiration from a conversation, or it can be from a movie, it can be from anything. So for this instance, for sure, I was watching these two characters in this difficult relationship, and I know that it's something that I know people who've gone or are going through a similar situation. So the main thing that started with Permission was the hook. Like, it's easier to ask forgiveness than permission. When someone said that, I was like, whoa, like that's deep. There's so much to unpack in that one sentence. Like, and it's so true. I've been in instances myself where it's like so much easier to do something and then go and say sorry. And I thought that hook would be amazing in a song. But then I wanted it to be a little bit deeper. So I thought of it from the other perspective. So Permission's all about like somebody in a very helpless position saying like, it's easier to ask forgiveness when you break my heart, but if you'd only asked for my permission, you'd have had it from the start. Like, you didn't need to
Yeah.
make this mess. Like, you just asked me and I would have done anything for you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it was mainly the reason that I was proud of the song was lyrically, I really wanted it to sound like poetry. So that was a focus from the get-go. As soon as I had the hook sorted, I worked backwards from there for trying to tell a really clear story and a painting and a picture, because that's the kind of theme that carries on throughout all the singles. Like, I really want them to be like you're reading poetry. I'm a big fan of poetry. Like, I have a whole collection and it's what I do in my pastimes. Like, I absolutely love poetry. So yeah, I think that's where it stemmed from.
Sure. And in terms of like the composition of it as well, what was it that made you decide that you wanted to kind of add in a bit more of a contrast, like the ballady style, but then also a bit of like an upbeat break as well, rather than just keeping it like a slow ballad throughout? Because I think that could have worked as well, but what was it that made you like think, okay, I want to add a bit of contrast in there?
So actually, it started off as a full ballad. Like, it started off as a full, like, it was just piano and vocals. And in the coming months, there hopefully will be that released too, like a full, and it's beautiful. Like, it's so, so pretty with just piano. But I think once I started producing it, I got the verse done surprisingly quickly, and that, like, the vibe was set, and I wanted it to keep moving. Like, you can have motifs that are maybe slightly more dark, but you want to be slightly more uplifting. Like, I love when Charlie Puth does it in Attention, for example. Like, he's singing about emotional turmoil, but you're still,
Yeah, the
so
bass line, yeah.
yeah, I love that. Like, I wanted something similar for Permission. So it does have this kind of like lully ballady feel. And then I like that it moves into a different space.
Just taking a break from talking about Permission for a second as well, like speaking to you, like I was aware beforehand that you obviously quite keen on songwriting, but it's really nice to actually speak to you in person about it as well, because and it doesn't come to any it doesn't come as any surprise to me that you are interested in like poetry as well, because obviously it makes sense like linking the two together. So how did you was it that you were sort of always into like poetry and then you kind of took that into your songwriting, or has it always kind of been a bit of both? Like, how did you actually get into this sort of very lyrical sort of?
Space. I think it's been very just side by side. It wasn't like one triggered the other. I was always keen on singing and performing. That's where my career started. And I was always encouraged, which is a blessing. I'm well aware. I'm very, very lucky that throughout my life, in kind of every phase, like school, home, I've always been encouraged to pursue singing. So once I fell in love with like live performance and just songs in general, then I was like, oh, I want to write my own stuff. So then it took me a while. Like I first sat down, I taught myself how to write and produce and like learned as much as I could. And then lyrics just kind of, I think you just have to do the 10,000 hour thing. Like you have to write a lot and then you kind of sift through, okay, this works and this really doesn't. But for sure, poetry always influences the way I write. And like I even have like an Insta that's dedicated, just the feed is entirely poetry, like little snippets or like longer snaps. And that's what I think, they go hand in hand really well.
Nice. And like, I think it is really cool, like you say, to see how it can be transferred from just words on a piece of paper to speaking it out to then adding the music. Like, and now obviously as well, going back to Permission, you've got the music video which was premiered on Rolling Stone India. So congrats on that. Like, how before we get into talking about the video, like how was it to sort of receive that level of support? Because surely they must have had to like look at the video and being like, yeah, like and hear the song and be like, yeah, we want to support this and premiere this.
That was like a bucket list moment for me. Like I had that on my vision board. I really wanted it and I've worked for it for a while now. And I was so happy that they wanted to premiere it. And the response has been really, really nice as well. People really love the video. We shot that in India. So it was like full circle. It was really cool. Yeah, incredibly talented videographer, Nishche, who works with World Through the Lens and World Through the Other Lens. And we basically did that whole shoot in like 2 days in India. I'd spent like 5 or 6 days because I directed it and kind of scouted locations like 6 or 7 days before we actually shot the two, like one day for Permission and then we did one day for another music video. So it was a lot to pack into things. So it was just really nice to see that whole energy and the hard work that we put into it was well received. And like even editing it, because I'm super picky, I edited the music video. So I was
you edited it yourself?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
really cool.
Thanks. Yeah. I to be honest, that's what I love music. There's so many elements of creativity that you can indulge yourself in. It's like just there's not enough time in the world, to be honest. Like if I could, I would spend more, of my life doing that because it's so much fun. But it was so rewarding to see like all of that energy, because obviously like it's a lot. Like when people don't really know or see, I didn't know or see the behind the stage to when you watch a music video, like what happens in the interim. And it's crazy. Like it's crazy. I used to watch, like my inspirations, then new music videos would come out and I'd watch them. And then now I do it, I realize, oh my gosh, so they had to have this kind of setup for that. And that must have been really hard to get the way they got it. You kind of think more once you've done it yourself.
Yeah. Like I suppose it adds like a whole completely different outlook on stuff that you've already seen, right?
Oh, for sure. Like now everywhere I go, I'm like, this would be so cool as a location shoot. Like, oh, this would be so cool if we did it from this lens or this angle. So yeah, it was a very learning intensive and rewarding experience. And I'm so grateful for Dave Arrows, who made the most beautiful write-up. Like I'm so grateful and so happy with the Rolling Stone interview.
No, and I'm really happy to see like people like yourself, like especially like UK artists getting that recognition as well. It's really cool, definitely.
It's
So
amazing. I'm so
yeah,
yeah, that was amazing.
definitely. So we're gonna give permission to play in a second, but just to sort of round things off, we've talked about how you're sort of looking to release music every other month or so. Um, but what's your plan in terms of 2023 beyond releases? Like what does this year look like for you?
So it's a lot of songwriting. It's a lot of live performances, hopefully. Some exciting things are in the works. We have regular releases, as we've talked about, more music videos, and basically a year of just active RIYA. Like I'm in full go ahead, trains left the station mode. So we've got a lot to see.
Nice. I definitely look forward to that. If people do want to keep up with you and your music videos, etc., where's the best place for them to find you?
If you go on either my website, which is www.riyaofficial.com, so that's RIYA official.com, all one word. And otherwise, you can find me on Insta, which is RIYA Official Music, all one word. And you can keep up to date on my YouTube too, which is again RIYA Official. You can add music, it'll come up.